Hi everyone, Starthany White Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Big K.R.I.T album, Forever is a Mighty Long Time. Now this album is excellent, and as a result of it being excellent, I want to don my yellow flannel. Cal, give me the flannel. Here we go, yellow flannel. Give the flannel here, thank you.
I don't see it in here.
It's not there?
I don't think it's in here.
Where could it be? My yellow flannel.
Where could it be? Where would such a thing go?
It's a part of my identity at this point. It's my brand. How am I supposed to tell people whether or not an album is good or not?
You know, maybe you just put on another shirt, a different shirt.
Okay. I guess I can just put on a shirt. Doesn't feel right, though. Big K.R.I.T is a Mississippi rapper, singer, producer, songwriter, quadruple threat. K.R.I.T started making pretty big waves in 2010 with his breakout mixtape, K.R.I.T Was Here, which for a mixtape ran a lot like an album. And then after this, K.R.I.T started dropping one album after another, masquerading as a mixtape. I mean, these projects were loaded with these classy, southern fried bangers. And also on these projects, K.R.I.T just bled his influences in such a creative way, in a way that he celebrated them, but also built off of them. I'm talking about UGK, Outkast, 8Ball and MJG, Goody Mob, Scarface, T.I., David Banner. Did I say David Banner? I think I didn't. Now the thing is, even though K.R.I.T dropped one great mixtape after the next, he had a hard time sticking the landing when it came to coming through with a commercial album for Def Jam Records. Whether that be his Live from the Underground record in 2012 or Catalactica. I mean, K.R.I.T expressed himself some of his frustration with not really coming through for fans on these projects, especially Live from the Underground. But I think this past couple of years of relative silence from K.R.I.T has done him a lot of good because he's hunkered down. He's focused on this project, which is huge. It's really 2 albums in one. He's invited on a wealth of other producers and collaborators. Jill Scott, T.I., Robert Glasper, and Terrace Martin. Great producers like Willpower, who's worked with Eminem, Tech-9, Manny Fresh, who's worked with everyone from Cash Money to Big Freedia, or even Organized Noise. But K.R.I.T still produces a bulk of this record himself, and you can really hear that in each track and each instrumental, even on the beats that he doesn't touch directly. He's still guiding the sound and the vibe of this album in a very conscious way. He's not just bringing on a producer so that he can grab at a sound that he wouldn't normally have. It's like he's bringing on guest artists to enhance his style, enhance his pre-existing sound. Now, as I already said, this thing is huge. It's almost 90 minutes long. It's 2 discs. It's over 20 tracks. There's only a couple of skits to be had on the entire thing. And there's not just a lot of material on this thing, but a lot of ambition too, as well as some of K.R.I.T's most hungry vocal performances, his sweetest hooks, and there are quite a few moments here where the lyrics bring a lot of food for thought too. Now, if you've been a K.R.I.T fan up until this point, you kind of go into a new project expecting that. He's always been great at sort of striking a balance between what bumps in the whip and what bumps in your brain. Shout out to FIFO. Now, even though K.R.I.T is asking a lot of his fans on this thing because it is so long, I didn't really find this project to be that tough of a slog. Mostly because K.R.I.T's music isn't really that strenuous a lot of the time. He usually wears his lyrical intentions on his sleeve, his hooks usually pop, his instrumentals are typically pretty lavish, and he's pretty much maintained all of this while shooting for this more epic sound overall on this new project. Not to mention that I think it's totally kosher to listen to these 2 separate discs at your leisure, because they each kind of have their own flow, their own vibe, their own personality. The first disc of this album is front-loaded with bangers, slowly grows more mellow as it plays on. There are loads of musical tributes here to K.R.I.T's southern predecessors, and of course that is reflected in some of the guest list here, whether it be T.I. and CeeLo, Bun B and Pimp C. Even the song Aux Chord is a purposeful musical tribute to the artists that inspire not just K.R.I.T's lyrics, but his production too. too. Now, the second disc on this project is the more conscious side of this coin. Musically, it starts off with much more in the way of soul and gospel influences, especially on cuts like Keep the Devil Off. Overall, there's much more singing from Big K.R.I.T, like on the cut Mixed Messages. And then as the record draws on, the songs get a little bit more aggressive and grim, somber in their tone. K.R.I.T's lyrics get a little bit more introspective. He reflects on the price of fame and the sacrifices he made to get where he is now. The song Bury Me in Gold uses gold as a metaphor for the things in life that are actually valuable, not just material things. In terms of the themes and the takeaway message, which is pretty religious a lot of the time on this album, it's pretty familiar stomping grounds for K.R.I.T. And that's the thing, even though he is making a double album here and he is taking quite a few risks, there is kind of that usual formula, that usual mix of elements that you usually hear on a K.R.I.T album. He still hasn't totally distanced himself from the blueprint that he's gone into a lot of his projects with. You have an invigorating introduction, a couple of electrifying trunk knockers, most notably the song SUBENSTEIN, which is the latest installment of the My Sub series, of course, all of the hardest and heaviest and bassiest tracks in K.R.I.T's discography. The beat on this track is incredible, so is K.R.I.T's flow. I mean, his charisma is off the charts. I also want to appreciate how timely this track is. There are so many monster references in the lyrics, and there's some kind of weird and freaky sound effects throughout the beat too. This song could easily double as like a Halloween banger. He's literally rapping about his sub coming alive. Also, I love the beat switch up in the second leg of the track. It gives the song a heavenly send-off. You have a sharp, sexy club anthem with a kind of R&B twist on 1999. A track where you have these dark, introspective reflections on K.R.I.T's craft and the rap game at large on Confetti. And then, of course, inspiring motivational anthems with chopped up soul samples like Get Away, which is an excellent song about sort of separating yourself from destructive things and negativity. Then you have these soul-charging southern rap ballads, and that's just the first disc. The second half of this thing is really where K.R.I.T pulls out a lot of the stops. He takes some of his biggest risks here, like the epic soul jazz instrumental that kicks the entire second disc off, which he names after himself. There are grand pianos on this track, heavy percussion, swirling synthesizers, soaring strings, amazing singers that back up the second half of the song. It's a moment like this that I feel like Justin is really sort of speaking through his music. He typically just sort of speaks with his words, but really, compositionally, he's speaking through his music in such a passionate and powerful way. It's somewhat tear-inducing. And this moment actually kind of gets me charged when I'm listening through the entire thing, because it kind of piques my interest and gets me excited for the second helping of this thing. The song Mixed Messages, I think conceptually, is one of K.R.I.T's smarter tracks, where he kind of looks back on his discography and thinks about just how he fails to deliver a consistent moral message in his music and sort of questions himself, thinking, is it bad that I'm tempted sometimes? Is it bad that I give in to that temptation? The idea of the good path and the bad path is one that K.R.I.T has explored in his music again and again and again, and yet he just kind of finds another way to work that angle with a new, fresh song here. I will say some of the singing toward the start of the track is a little bit clumsy, but it seems like K.R.I.T self-references even that later in the song, where he says that he has this passion, this desire to sing in his music, but he better rap because he's known as a rapper, and that's just something that he has to kind of stick to. Also, the huge gospel choral vocals on the track Keep the Devil Off are fantastic. And throughout the song, K.R.I.T delivers these shouty, huge vocals that are sort of rapping, but also it seems like he's giving a sermon. I don't think it was like the best lead single for the album and everything, and I do think the song draws on a little long at 5 minutes, like maybe around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. You've kind of just hit like an extended instrumental of the track, and you've heard much of what the song is going to do. It's a little repetitive, but still, I would say an essential part of this track list. And while I'm at it, I'll say that maybe the song Layup, which is possibly the most low-key track on this entire thing, could have used a touch of shortening too. However, the song Miss Georgia FORNIA is maybe the most fantastic piece of country rap fusion that I've heard in a while. The pianos on this track, the acoustic guitars, they mix really well with the beat and K.R.I.T's rapping, and Joy's vocals on the track make the song in a lot of ways. It's just such a beautiful track. It's so well put together. It's so soulful. It's so passionate. It's so catchy. I do think the second disc hits a little bit of a lull in the middle with the song Everlasting, as well as Higher Calling. I think the sound of these two tracks is a little average for this project, a little average for K.R.I.T. However, I do appreciate what he's trying to do with these two tracks because they do seem connected. The former kind of seems like K.R.I.T spitting some game on this girl who he's questioning whether or not he has long-term potential with romantically. And then the latter of these two songs, featuring Jill Scott, is kind of like the deeper, more passionate love song that kind of builds off of the previous track. The song has this really intense emotional and sexual energy to it, and the spaciness kind of reminds me of records like ATLiens. Meanwhile, the song Drinking Sessions is maybe K.R.I.T's most emotional track yet. I mean, on a lot of this cut, he sounds like he's on the verge of tears. And not totally surprising considering that I think lyrically he's kind of getting to the root of a lot of what drives him as an artist, a lot of what drives his personal morality. The following track, The Light, is just as enthralling lyrically, features this tense, jazzy instrumental that Terrace Martin and Robert Glasper put together. It's gorgeous. K.R.I.T takes to this backing instrumentation so well, and Bury Me in Gold is just an amazing send-off for the album. It's a great sort of message. It's a great takeaway for the record itself. K.R.I.T has explored a lot of these familiar themes of peace and love and unity and understanding, but I think has sort of connected them and elevated them in a way that he hasn't before. Because this album, it's fun, it's catchy, it's well produced, it's well performed, but I feel like a lot of the messaging and a lot of what K.R.I.T is doing here, it's just, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is I feel like his music, what he's doing on this album, this double album, it speaks directly to the soul and human decency. And I love that. It's rare that I hear an album, and it has happened in the past, but it's rare that I hear an album and you know what? It makes me want to be like a better person. And that's a beautiful thing. Again, I'll say that there are a few moments on the album where I think its length or the length of some individual tracks does come around to bite it. There's a bit of a lull in the middle of the second disc. There are so many songs on this thing that fade out, although that I got kind of used to pretty fast. CeeLo feature is kind of silly. The guest singing on 1999 is a little buttery, but I kind of came to love it. Overall, though, I think this is the K.R.I.T album that I've been waiting for. It's everything I've loved about him up until this point, but expanded and amplified and matured. I would go as far as to say that this thing is his artistic second wind, and I'm looking forward to seeing how far that takes him in the future. I'm feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this big K.R.I.T album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave a thoughtful comment in the comments if you're feeling thoughtful. Over here next to my head are a few other big K.R.I.T reviews you can check out, or you can click on the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Forever.